Hi, I'm Janice Walt-Grenadier, and I want to talk to you a little bit about Eric Holder. Eric Holder was the United States Attorney General, and he was the United States Attorney General during a very tough time in our country, and a time where a lot of Americans were having difficulties with their job and with saving their home. What people don't understand is we can look back now and we can see exactly what our government did to us. And it starts with Eric Holder, who came from a law firm called Covington and Burling in Washington, D.C. It's my understanding from the different articles that are out there that Eric Holder had an office, a corner office, on the 11th floor of their offices that stayed vacant the entire time he was at the Department of Justice. Not only did that stay vacant, apparently he only excused himself or didn't defend or work with one of the big banks, which was UBS. All the other ones he was involved in the secret and the sealed settlement that the government, according to Forbes, has collected over $251 billion from the major banks, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, Chase, etc., Citibank, for their illegal actions in the mortgage industry. And in return, the American people have been left homeless. They collected, again, let me remind you, $251 billion that did not go back to the American people who were harmed. And if it did go back, it went back at maybe a few $100s per person to those people. The remainder of the people, after paying fines, after HAMP programs, after being lied to, after having documents lost and whatnot, find themselves either homeless or still in the courts fighting it. So what I'd like to do is give you a little bit of chart of, excuse me, what happened. You have Eric Holder here, Department of Justice. You have the big banks over here, friends of Eric Holder's, from his time at Covington and Burling. You have Covington and Burling representing all the big banks. Now, if they negotiated $251 billion while Eric Holder was in charge, who got paid? Burling, Covington and Burling. So then you have Eric Holder leaving, going back to Covington and Burling, and has been reported in the press, his 11th floor office with great views, ready for him. $78 million bonus, signing bonus. And along with, there's been rumor that there was a large penthouse also that was purchased for him and his wife to live in, conveniently in D.C. So then you go to the different states. And I mean, as if that doesn't look questionable even to a layperson or to anybody who's lost their home, and to have the person who was supposed to protect you get $78 billion for $1 million in a signing bonus and his 11th floor office back for putting you out on the street, because that's how Americans should be looking at it. And then you go to the different states and the attorney generals in the different states, and they got anywhere from $500 million to hundreds of millions or whatever for basically doing the same thing. Now you look at the American public, the person on the street who had a hard time, who their company was closed down because the government decided they weren't worth investing in or whatever. That person has lost their home, they're homeless, and have nowhere to turn, and you have people right and left committing suicide and different things. You have the attorneys that are making probably $7 or $8 million a year who are foreclosing on them from these banks and everything, forging documents, lying to you, perjury. You have the banks doing the same thing back. You have the HAMP programs losing your documents. You've made all your payments and then they decide you don't qualify and they foreclose on your home. You hear one story after another. Every day there's probably 100 people that have a story they could share with you. So you decide you're going to fight them. You've got everything documented. You've got the fact that they lied in documents, they lied in emails, they, whatever. You go to court. The judges who work for the Department of Justice, if they're federal, or the judges who work for the state attorney general, now rule in favor of the banks. And anything that happened to you that was illegal, that they've already shown they have dirty hands because the government's collected has already found them in default. So what? It's immaterial. The judges ignore it because they're getting their bonuses, their retirement funds, or maybe even in their retirement funds they did. You have Judge Brinkema in Alexandria Federal Court who lost 60% of her portfolio to this. And she took it out on Lee Farkas. She decided Lee Farkas was the banker who took away all of her money and everything, so he got 30 years in jail. He wasn't even one of the big bankers. Not only did he have to pay billions back, but he got 30 years in jail by a judge who didn't have jurisdiction because she had a conflict of interest. As all these judges have conflicts of interest because their bosses have taken payoffs from the banks. So when we go to court as an American public, we're going to court in front of a judge who already has a bias against us. Because if they rule in favor of the banks or who's being illegally being dishonest, and it doesn't make their bosses happy, they could find themselves without a job. So we have a real problem, and it's not even with the banks. It's with the mafia, which is actually the enterprise is our government. The judiciary, the government, and the elected officials have all become an enterprise, no different than the mafia, in a reeking and racketeering fashion, where as American citizens we can't get honest services in court because they've taken a payoff. And it's completely out there. The press is talking about it, and nobody polices them. They police themselves. And in fact, if you wanted to see any of these agreements, you as an American citizen can't, because they've sealed them. They've sealed them to protect their own ass. So we've got to start asking, did Eric Holder deserve $78 million to go back to the law firm that was paid probably close to $1 billion, if not more, for the $251 billion our government took, so that none of the big banks, because too big to fail, would go to jail? Think about it, and think about who you know is homeless, or think about who you know is having a difficult time with their mortgage. Thank you.